दोस्तों, आप सभी का स्वागत है समाचार और करंट अफेयर्स के एक नए चैनल द ग्लोबल टीवी में, जिसमें समाचारों को लाखों स्रोतों, दैनिक रिपोर्टों और ऐतिहासिक तथ्यों से इकट्ठा कर आपके सामने पेश किया जाता है। इसमें राजनीतिक, कूटनीतिक, सामाजिक, विदेश मामले और विज्ञान सहित कई अन्य मुद्दों पर बात की जाती है, जिसे दुनिया के कई देशों में देखा जाता है। इस कार्यक्रम का प्रस्तुत करता हूं आपका अपना मैं, प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर रत्नेश द्विवेदी। मैंने बीबीसी, जी न्यूज, EIM न्यूज वायर, टक मैगजीन, वर्ल्ड न्यूज टुमारो कॉर्पोरेशन, रशियन इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स काउंसिल का डेली काउंसिल, मॉडर्न डिप्लोमेसी और ऐसी कई सारी प्रतिष्ठित समाचार एजेंसियों और संस्थानों से ट्रेनिंग ली है। मेरा शोध प्रबंध मीडिया और आतंकवाद, BBC और CNN द्वारा 9/11 और 26/11 की कवरेज और उनसे हुई मूलभूत गलतियों पर आधारित है। 3 मानद डॉक्टरेट के अलावा मैंने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जर्नल और कॉन्फ्रेंसेस के लिए तकरीबन 43 शोध पत्र लिखे और प्रस्तुत किए हैं। इसके अलावा 500 से ज्यादा लेख और 25 किताबें लिखी हैं। प्रोफेसर द्विवेदी यानी मैं रूसी सरकार के थिंक टैंक रशियन इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स काउंसिल, टक मैगजीन, वर्ल्ड न्यूज टुमारो कॉर्पोरेशन, इपो टाइम्स और मॉडर्न डिप्लोमेसी के लिए विदेशी मामलों पर लिखते हैं। पिछले 25 सालों में मैंने 2.5 से 3 लाख चिट्ठियां विश्व के शीर्षस्थ नेतृत्व को लिखी हैं। इसके अलावा दुनिया की कई सारी रिसर्च संस्थाओं में मैं कई सारे नोबेल विजेताओं के साथ शामिल हूँ। ये तो हुई बौद्धिक बातें, लेकिन इस समाचार चैनल का उद्देश्य है कि इन्हीं विषयों पर नवीनतम जानकारी और ऐतिहासिक, सामाजिक, वैज्ञानिक तथ्यों को आपके सामने सरल भाषा में पेश करना। तो लीजिए, हाजिर है आपके सामने आपका अपना समाचार चैनल द ग्लोबल टीवी।
Welcome all viewers in this very fresh episode of Global TV. And today we have a very renowned and highly decorated soldier of the United States Army, though he is retired, but he has vast experience in far-flung areas of Russia and Afghanistan, holding very senior positions of United States Army. I'm going to ask him how he finds his entire career and how has been his experiences in one of the best armies of the world.
Okay, it is an honor to be brought onto your show on your I guess your podcast, and it is an honor to be talking to your fellow Indian citizens and your international audience. I've been an Army officer, U.S. for 34 years. I joined in 1980, and then I retired in 2015. During that time, I was a tactical and then strategic intelligence officer, military intelligence, a war uniform, and started in the Cold War as a young artillery officer, fire in a howitzer battalion that fired regular rounds, but also was equipped if it had to go nuclear, which was what you think about it when you're firing nuclear rounds, 18 kilometers. That's pretty scary and also pretty crazy. But that was the defense of Europe. Then my career took that, yeah, and thank God we survived that. Then I continued my career and served internationally I was in Germany for 10 years in 3 different missions, 3 different rotations. First West Germany, then the miracle of the end of the Cold War, and then the breakup of the Soviet Union. And then from there, I deployed to the Balkans and Kosovo for a year. And then right after that, became the chief of counterintelligence for U.S. Army Europe. And from there, I deployed to Afghanistan in 2008 and 2009 during a very, very, very complicated period. Tragically, it was during that time, as you would know, the bombing outside the Indian embassy in Kabul occurred. And that was a terrible day. We actually heard the explosion. So the Indians were with us, and we always felt that way. And so I was there during that year. I'm going to shamelessly self-promote. This is my book, Afghanistan Kabul Courier. I encourage you.
That's wonderful.
If you're interested, it's all about that region during a critical period, and it's just been published to make it contemporary. And of course, I know India has a lot of interest in this. It was my view on the ground in Afghanistan during this really, really important time. I encourage your readers. It can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. So I did that. And then from that mission, came back to Germany again, and then had the honor and privilege, and where I served with great Indian military attaches. I went to Moscow, and I was our senior defense attaché to Moscow between 2012 and 2014. And I was there during the first invasion of Ukraine in 2014. With the foreign community, it was a difficult time. We all stayed very close. Again, had a great relationship with the Indian embassy. You could see what is going on in 2014 playing out today in 2022 in Ukraine, around Ukraine. I bring one other point for all your viewers, because I try to talk about this from a global thing and not just a Europe West possession, is that, remember, we are right now at the 30th anniversary of the breakup of the Soviet Union. Just occurred, the anniversary was just 10 days ago. And the shock for the Russians and the Soviets of breaking up into 15 nations at the stroke of a clock on the 25th, 26th of December, I think still affects what is going on. And you see that, friends, today playing out in the periphery of the former Soviet Union, whether it's Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, before in Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. So this is far, so there's a lot of baggage, what we call psychological baggage linked to this. And I think that there's an aspect of the Russians that the 1990s was a very difficult time after the breakup. It didn't go well for many Russians. And so there's a scar tissue now that's playing in, I believe, if you will, certainly in the leadership of Russians, a lot of patriotic Russians. Now, I've always been a NATO guy, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and as a US guy, and nobody in the West wants conflict or confrontation with Russia. And I don't believe Russia wants to go to war. I don't. But right now there's a lot of posturing and pointing and coercion and a lot of weapons, and it's dangerous, very dangerous to potential provocation, accident, or incident. And everybody needs to be on guard, take a deep breath. I support big negotiations this week in Europe, on strategic stability, the NATO-Russia Council, and a meeting of the OSCE. And I talk about all of this because, again, and I'll come back to the 30th anniversary at the end of our talk, but this is all driving things. But a major change, and here is a major Indian equity, I believe, is that the Russians have a firmer partnership. It isn't an alliance, but a partnership with the People's Republic of China that wasn't in place. It had been there for a while, but not like this. That doesn't mean a go-to-war partnership, but Russia now can really focus on the West and not worry about the Far East right now, where in the past it had to. I believe the Russians and the Chinese are like oil and water. They fundamentally are different, but the way they look at the world and threats and their fears of color revolution and regime change, right now they're supporting each other diplomatically. They've got each other's back, and that allows Russia to focus again in the West, where I believe, again, there is no threat, and the Russia and the West should get along because there are bigger problems in the world. And I know Russia has good relations with India, which I believe is a good thing. And then, of course, we have Asia, China, Taiwan. We have China and Ladakh and your borders, and Pakistan, and which is for you existential, and we're coming to that. And I'm very glad that that relations over the last couple of American administrations with the Indian government has been improving and improving. And I think that many ways we're very different, but we are both large democracies, and we all have our challenges, but we have also a lot in common, where actually other nations in Asia might not. So I'm very aware of China, the Taiwan factor, China and the and the push up in the Himalayas, Indian and Chinese dangerous skirmishes up there.
I will come to that. Yeah. You have ignited so many questions within 2 paragraphs which you spoke. You are talking about disintegration of Soviet Union. I was studying in 10th standard that time, and I heard BBC radio. It is still, but that time it was hugely popular in villages of India, the BBC Hindi radio. So I was glued to that radio set. We had a very old radio set in our village. Everything was clear. I mean, the man who started perestroika, a liberal revolution in Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, he was finding himself helpless completely. The person on whom he trusted more than him, the Boris Yeltsin. I mean, he was given a time that he will not leave the palace, and he can stay there up to 30th December. Something, a lot of things, but all of a sudden, his speech on that day was like kind of a very mechanical. He has nothing to say to the people of USSR except that he had surrendered before the powers who signed an illegal. According to Mikhail Gorbachev and his followers, the treaty of CIS countries, which they said that this was against the rule of law. So how will you have been a keen watcher of development during that time? How will you define those situations and its impact in current war?
No, you've opened up Pandora's box with me. Okay. Okay, because I first studied, because of glasnost and perestroika, as a young American Army captain, I received a Soviet visa and American permission to study in a Soviet provincial city between Moscow and Leningrad, out in a small city of 500,000 people. And I was there for that summer of 1989, when everything was, Germany was beginning to break away, the Cold War was rapidly falling apart. And in the Soviet Union, there was a lot of hope for democracy, though a lot of them didn't really know what it was. Nobody, Ratnesh, nobody imagined, though, even the most imaginative Russians, that the Soviet Union would break up. That was a shock to everybody. Though you had Gorbachev and Reagan, and then you had Gorbachev and Bush, and Gorbachev with Helmut Kohl in Germany, and I was there in Russia talking to Russian students. And here's my other shameless. Here's the second one. I just published this. It's also on Amazon 3 months ago. It's called Swimming.
Double bonanza.
Double barrage. Swimming the Volga. And it is my eyewitness experiences in the Soviet Union and Russia from 1989 until 1999, up to the time of Putin coming. And so this is Gorbachev, the fall of the Soviet Union, and then the Yeltsin years, where there was a lot of hope, but also a lot of sadness. And I encourage, it is again, a young officer I go back to this provincial city, friends, 8 times after I study there in the summer, that summer of '89, and I follow Russia, its changes through its people during that time. And then I just wrote a brand new foreword and afterword to bring it to date. So I offer that as well to your Amazon readership. This was an emotional, crazy time. It was the Wild West in Russia. Again, the hopes, the dreams of the Russians were there. There was, at that point, when I was an young American there, and many had this experience, we were almost treated like rock stars in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Yeltsin was a Democrat, and what is fascinating is he came out of the Ural Mountains, and so up through the Communist Party, as did Mikhail Gorbachev out in Stavropol near the Caucasus. And these guys reform in their own way, and they have a itchy alliance, but also it's very, very competitive. But to be in Russia, and this is what I write about, and you touched on, Ratnesh, is I can't emphasize the fallen dreams, the broken dreams. Again, it's the mainstream Russian population that suffer through not one but 2 devaluations of the ruble. Yet they see farsovshiki, black marketeers, become oligarchs and who grab up the businesses and things, and it starts to get wobbly. The experiment with democracy, and India knows this. A democracy doesn't happen like magic. You have to have a history and a tradition, and you've been working on it for generations, as we have. It just doesn't magically appear. You have to have governance, rule of law, all those things, and the Russians struggled mightily. One of the things that my country, and maybe we in the West, didn't fully appreciate, President Bush did, was there was also a feeling of triumphalism in the West. We won the Cold War. And that was probably not the best message to send the Russians who were down at that time. And as there's anything we all know, is how proud the Russians are. and they have a long memory and a long memory of grievances. And so they hold that for us. Again, when I talk about Russia and, if you will, its failed experiment with democracy, it didn't totally fail. Russia today is vastly more open than it was during the Soviet period. Vastly more open. It's got an internet culture. It is a autocracy, but not a dictatorship, but it could tip that way. So it is nothing like Brezhnev Stalin, but they are struggling. I'm one that speaks of Russia like an old Cold War, because I've been a Cold War in my life twice. Once for 8-9 years in the 1980s as a young Army officer, early in my career, NATO. And then I became a new age Cold War officer in 2014, when relations collapsed and the Russians invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea. I was there, I saw it, it was wrong. Yes, I understand the history and the grievances and all of that, but they broke every international law in the book, and that wasn't the way to do it. And we are now there again today, on the edge of something potentially very dangerous. So that period of the breakup of the Soviet Union, 30 years, I think is sort of the founding story of whatever the new Russia is, this anxiousness, this grievance, where the Soviet Union again disappears, and Russia becomes one of 15 countries, but still very much feels primacy, I think the word would be, in the lands of the former Soviet Union. And one of the problems we have in the West, but not just in the West, United Nations, is that no nation should dictate the foreign policy of other nations that have been recognized by the United Nations. And in Russia's case, something called the Budapest Memorandum with Ukraine in 1994, where miraculously we are able to get Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus all disarmed of their nuclear weapons, but at the same point, their sovereignty was guaranteed, and Russia did that. So
one thing coming in my mind. Sorry to interrupt you. We are seeing in the global geopolitics and military affairs, we are seeing, I mean, we have seen, you yourself, you have a long experience. You have served during Cold War era. You have seen Cuban Missile Crisis. On the other side, Vladimir Putin's, if I say, ambitions are unstoppable towards Ukraine or Kazakhstan, or I mean, and then there are other pockets of disturbances where there is a threat of nuclear warfare, even if they have signed any agreement, like India-Pakistan situation remains always tense. You yourself quoted, and we have seen in June 2020, 20 soldiers of Indian Army dying and in conflict with China. So do you think we are returning back to Cold War era if we take global situation in mind?
Yes, I'm sorry, we have dogs.
Not a problem.
First of all, I'm very worried, and again, nobody wants it, but I'm very worried about an accident or an incident or escalation gone wrong, and we get ourselves into something nuclear. I've written that a nuclear war between India and Pakistan, that neither of your countries want, would create the greatest humanitarian crisis in the history of this planet. It might not destroy the planet, but it would be horrific. A nuclear war between the United States and the Russian Federation that nobody wants would be the end of the world as we know it. Whether it is the first 3 to 5 missiles, I believe it's all over, and we can count deterrence and counter deterrence and all of that. So yes, the skirmishes that occurred up in the Galwan Valley that you had 2 years ago very much got our attention, because there's a lot of pride and emotion that goes on in these things. You and Pakistan and your history are so interwoven in many ways. So it's personal, and it's personal in a way that maybe Russia, Ukraine is. I think Russia, United States is a different type of personal, but it's not intertwined historically, ethnically, and all of that. But these are really dangerous. And so I'm really glad that that Indian and Pakistani leaders realized this could go dangerous, took a deep breath, and everybody calmed down. And I realize it's still tense, but then you have another problem now up on the glacier with China, and that I know is a whole nother discussion. So yes, nuclear war is scary. I've been on the edge of it as a young officer, as I said, with nuclear capable rounds. Never want to go there again. As India is so literate in English, I tell my young audiences, how many of you have ever seen the American movie by Stanley Kubrick, Dr. Strangelove? And a few do. Everybody my generation does. Go watch it. It's a satire about nuclear war and the nuclear age in the 1960s. And what is the essence, friends, of good satire? An element of the truth. So I throw that out your way. It's a completely crazy movie, but it was all in this shadow of potential nuclear war. We're in that period now where, again, the nukes are still primary. However, what makes it all more dangerous and India is a remarkably capable cyber country and IT linked, is that with all these new weapons of war, whether when nukes aren't new, but there are new nukes, and then with all the other things going on, hypersonic and all these things, it's still a people business, friend. And the time now, because of the cyber near instantaneous communication, the decision deconfliction time now is in minutes rather than hours or days in a crisis. And now, because of the cyber and disinformation, you can hide and mask, if you will, your intentions or launch things and all of that, or somebody could try to hack launch code. It's very scary, which is why it's so important that our senior leaders are talking about nuclear weapons and then all the cyber and AI and all of that, because it is a perilous ground. And the younger generations, your generation, are much smarter at this than I am. But I've been a Cold Warrior, and I would remember being a little boy, my parents being very quiet, not really telling me. I was 8 years old during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when people thought in 1962, the United States and Soviet Union were going to blow each other off the world and everybody with it. So those are the existential threats and risks today, as we have our skirmishes and fights along our borders and everything else. It could escalate fast. On the last point I want to make is I worry about the brilliance of our youth, our brilliant technology. They're going to save the world. But I want to be sure and hope that decisions and consequence out in this nuclear cyber don't come easily. One thing that may have saved us in the Cold War is many of our decision makers were World War II and Korean War veterans that saw the horrors of war up close, especially the Soviets and Europeans, and realized that, again, the terminology was used, and we're hopefully going, there are no winners in a nuclear war, or if I would say today, a great power war for all the things that are out there. I'll stop on this. And now we're in this gray zone, the information age, and that is also dangerous because right now, with certain countries, we're right now in a continuum of information conflict that are below the threshold of war, but certainly above the threshold of peace. And that's a very dangerous place as well.
Right. You see, in past 25 years, the relation between India and United States of America has changed. They have come remarkably close through civilian nuclear deal, multiple other agreements, Quad, and so many other things. On one side, we share the common concern, somehow a common concern as far as China is concerned, whether it is Taiwan, issue of Taiwan, or in South China Sea. And China is also going to work on One Belt, One Road initiative.
Yes.
So how do you see China's growing cloud? Xi Jinping now have become a lifetime premier of China as per whatever changes they have brought in CCP regulations. So how do you see these developments?
Yeah. Yes, Xi Jinping, potential, president for life. What is interesting is that if he decides to do it, along with Xi Jinping, president for life, Vladimir Putin could be the Russian president all the way to 2036. And so they will have this partnership in most likely personal, and it is real. It is a real relationship, though they have their interests and different. So that's there. When I talk about Russia, I tell people you've got to, and this is why it's great. I'm talking with a Asia, South Asia perspective as well, or a Eurasia perspective. I think is probably better. Russia's got 11 time zones. It's vast. It's vast. It's beyond comprehension. It's wider than flying from Washington, D.C. to the Hawaiian Islands. It's that huge a country on the ground. And they have carved that country, much of it in Asia, out of the hides and carcasses of other great civilizations, all the way out to the Pacific, and certainly along the Chinese border and Central Asia and all of that. Well, yes, they have a partnership, but what is going on? Russia's population is about 75–80% concentrated in the West, the other 20% all the way out to Vladivostok and along the borders, very light. So what you have now is an increasingly confident, aggressive, I think the word is, China I call aggressively ambitious. That's how I call it, aggressively ambitious. I call Russia dangerously difficult, but not ambitious the way the Chinese are. And frankly, and I have had good experiences on the personal Chinese level, including think tank. So I don't want to get on the anti-Chinese bandwagon. I resist it, but there's a lot to be concerned about. All right. And just looking at it as dispassionately as possible. The Belt and Road Initiative. One thing that the United States and Russia have in common that China does not, and I think India less so as well, is that we have resource independence, US and Russians. We have a lot of other things that make problems for us, but we are resource independent. And India, by its geography in the south and the sea trading, can get access pretty easily to the resources that it needs. China, in its growth model, has to get resources. What's the statistic? Maybe 40% it create its own energy and all of that, which makes it, with this huge country, has to look outside of its borders for those resources if it cannot purchase them, acquire them. They don't want war, but they want the resources. And I think the Belt and Road Initiative is a major piece of that. Whether the overland, through north of India and through Central Asia and down towards the Caspian, and then the sea parts of it down through the Indian Ocean and Gwadar and Pakistan and all of that. Now, I wish it were just economic. I wish it were just economic, but with the Belt and Road Initiative is coming infrastructure, which facilitates economy. That's smart. But with it, probably, almost certainly, is going to come influence, and with it then security, meaning we've got to secure our supplies, our infrastructure, our Belt and Road to the west and south, which means bases, military bases, projection. And that, I believe, we're in the early to mid stages of now. It's playing out. So right now, you can see it. We talk about Russia. I'm of the mind that the Russians have no choice but to go along with China on this one. Militarily, in the Russian Far East, Russians are a shadow of what they were in the Soviet Union, and China has conventional primacy. But as I was reminded by a Russian think tank, remember, we have nukes, and that's true. So the Russians, I think, are carefully trying to manage the Belt and Road Initiative. They're making some money on it. They can't stop the Chinese from going up through Central Asia and elsewhere, but they're going to try to influence and earn from it. Also, if I'm a Russian, I will go along and take the money. I need it. I like the infrastructure, but I'm not so deep down happy about the Polar Silk Road that the Chinese are talking about through the Arctic. Now, if you're sitting in Russian Far East, out into Siberia, and you see this large, if you will, vein, if you will, of Chinese Belt and Road led initiative coming through what I call Central Asia, I call today the independent lands of the former Southern Soviet Union. And the Chinese are kind of in there now. And they're in there with business. And I hear the locals want the money, but they don't particularly like Chinese business practices. You hear about these debt traps and things like that go on in Africa. So there's a lot to worry about. So right now, the Chinese are buying up infrastructure, building infrastructure, creating influence, creating dependence, both all the way, as I said, to the Caspian, through areas north of India that's interesting, and through the Indian Ocean, and then, of course, as I said, in more and more in the Arctic. So this is strategic. It's not military, but there is a security aspect that is only going to grow, I believe, because of the aggressive ambition, if you will, of a very restless, if you will, Chinese regime that thinks big in the world today more than any other country in the world, including my own.
Right. sir, you have served with the top of the top officers of Indian Army also. I can see a map behind you. Would you like to tell a bit about that map?
Oh, the map behind me?
Yes.
No, this is a Japanese. It's a Japanese silk print of the last century. So
Oh.
it's basically it's the Japanese feudal wars, if you will, during the shogunate, during that dynastic period, and is a Japanese. I've spent a lot of my time in Asia. 3 years in Korea. I've often been on the Russian-Chinese border along the Amur River. I've never been to your extraordinary country, and that is a must. I got to Pakistan and Islamabad just, in fact, before the Intercontinental Hotel was blown up in 2008 as part of the ISAF NATO mission, trying to work all the issues with the Northwest frontier and Pakistan and Afghanistan. So while I'm mostly Europe guy, I have a lot of Asia time, and because of my interest in Russia, I remind people that Russia is also an Asian nation. Though I think in Asia they mostly are just playing defense. They're just trying to hang on with what they've got. A lot going on around them. Finally, India. You asked me. I am very glad that we have the Quad, I think that India has always had its own head in foreign policy. You were non-aligned for a long time. I don't want to call you fully aligned, but you are very carefully, certainly more aligned than you were in the past. Again, always with your independent foreign policy head, which I respect. You maintain good relations with the Russians. I saw that when I was in Moscow. I know that Russia has, I know one of the challenges that you and a number of other countries, we actually have to, is you have some block modernizations you need to do with your military. And certainly Russia and your country have a long history of arms trade and all of that. And I know we're beginning to do that. Then you have, the, AUKUS, that is unlike the, while the Quad has a security dimension, it's really as much political, economic, societal, which is why I like what it is, also security, where the AUKUS is really more focused on security matters. I'm glad there's more attention to what we call the term Indo-Pacific. That was created, that term, for our members in Hawaii, and the orientation, recognizing the importance of India strategically. But I realize that it's a very tricky place. We have our on again, off again. I don't even know what the word is. Relationship with Pakistan. Okay. And I'm one that was in Afghanistan when the Haqqani network, coming out of Quetta and all of that, did a lot of damage to us and our allies. So yet, they are influencers too, and they have nuclear weapons, and that makes us sensitive. Certainly, most of all, in respect to our growing. I think we're already friends, but our growing partner in India. So there's a lot of a lot of angles to all this. Is this, by the way, what you wanted me to do today?
Yes, sir. First, let me finish off this interview. I will talk to you. Afghanistan is totally a different and vast subject, and very concerned with India as it is connected with the United States of America, even after U.S. Army has left. I will ask you. I accepted that you have ignited too many questions in me. I will ask these questions on Afghanistan, India-US relation, US-Russia relation, India-China relation in part 2 of this interview. If you will be able to spare some time in some other day, it's really a great honor to have such a top officer from United States Army who had served in troubled times alongside Indian diplomats and Indian Army officers, not only in Afghanistan, but also in Russia and elsewhere. Sir, thank you very much from bottom of my heart.
Listen, God bless you for bringing me on. You and your Indian fellow citizens would flatter me so much. And I know it's because I'm a self-author. If you would go out and actually grab these for India, because I think you might actually find them really interesting. Afghanistan, I'll close on this. I was shocked with what happened in August, but not surprised. Just how it happened and how fast it happened. But it was tipping negatively for quite a while. And this is there is almost, and I write about it in my Afghan, we're almost on the edge of a new great game there. And I know that's for India kind of an itchy way of using it, but there are going to be a lot of power, regional power, great, and India will have an interest on what happens with Afghanistan, the journey of the Taliban. We're in this humanity crisis now. And the other piece, and you mentioned it, is playing in all of this, just blew out this week, was Kazakhstan.
Yes.
And so Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, I know the country would prefer it would be calm and quiet. It is lively. Everything touches and influences everything else. I know you're very, very concerned. And there's a lot to be concerned. Again, I think we were all quite shocked with what happened in Kazakhstan just now, until you sit back and really read about it. Oh, okay. We had taken it for granted. So you are in right now a geostrategic cockpit, we call it, with a lot going on with all of these things in the north. You have new partners and friends. You have potential adversaries. You have the Belt and Road. There's a lot. The Americans, I think, yeah, we are your friends and partners. I want us to get even stronger together because I really think that we have a lot of common interests. And we are also the two greatest, the largest democracies in the world, as chaotic as it is. And we can't forget that. God bless and thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much. And the kind word which you used for India as one of the top officers of one of the great army in the world, that we are your friends. That is what India and Indians wanted to listen from a person of your eminence. Thank you very much. And I will share this interview with whomsoever I know in power circuits in India and elsewhere. I invite you as a host of this show and as a journalist to visit India at least once. And in my personal capacity, I invite you, please be our guest and enjoy the incredibility of India. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. My wife and I would love it. Thank you so much. All of you be safe for 2022. And I look forward to more conversations and maybe an eye to eye in the future. Yes. Be safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Be safe.